what are the real rules when it comes to what happens with the kids? Today's episode, we're going to be talking about that. Whether you've just separated or you've been separated for a while or you haven't got court orders yet, we're going to be exploring all the things that you may come across as you go through this journey. And at the end, we'll also be talking about how to navigate this based on the divorce personality type you're dealing with, as well as how do you navigate this if you are in a domestic violence situation. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, before we get started, just a reminder, Mum's not your lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, and we may be talking about domestic violence. So if you do feel triggered by that, please call 1-800-RESPECT or 1311-14 Lifeline. And of course, always go and get your own legal advice as each situation is different. And this is just a general discussion. So this may not be relevant to your particular situation. So let's get to the jingle. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Now, Mum, we've had a lot of questions recently around this, and you've had a few phone calls around this. And so we thought we should touch on it. I really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but I think we need to do a basic overview to start with.
Okay.
So, Mum, I guess anyone who's listening to this, there's all these myths and things flying around about what people should be doing and they shouldn't be doing when they break up. And are there any rules at all that people have to follow before they've got official court orders?
Laura, giving a typical lawyer answer. There's no rules written down, but the things that you do in early separation may have consequences for you in the future. The only rule I would suggest is the one that any good parent has, and that is to put the children's interests first and don't put them in harm's way.
You've pretty much just given a very lawyery answer. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of so we know, because people are listening and I know that they're at all different stages, but they always have this niggling feeling, am I doing the right thing? So basically you're saying the number one rule to really run by any decision you make should be, is this in the best interest of the children? Because that's what the court does look at eventually.
Absolutely. The courts will run a rule of what you've done. They have a look at everyone's behaviour since separation if it comes to court. And you need to always be acting protectively and in the best interests of the children. But I don't think people don't plan. I don't think anyone. So in anything else we do, we're on YouTube, we're talking to people, and we've probably been vaguely interested in going around all of our lives. But this suddenly being separated with kids, and there's going to be 2 households, no one even thinks of that. And so your mind goes nuts, I think, just racing thoughts. What am I supposed to do? How am I going to do this? And everyone has Jodie from the lunchroom. Her situation might be different to yours.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the different types of personalities that people are dealing with in a minute. But let's just touch on these questions that we always get asked.
Fire away.
Can I take the kids with me when I leave?
Yes, you can, in most cases. Okay. If they're safer with you, or if you've been their primary parent, it would be expected that the children. Another question is, can I leave the children? And I would say to the person who's thinking, I think I'd be saying, start as you mean to go on. And that is one of the big mistakes people make, is they, for all the right reasons, right? I don't know where I'm going to be sleeping. I don't want to upset the children or disrupt their routine, and I'll start having time with them when I'm settled. That leaves the door open for the other person to exclude you going forward.
Okay. So that old myth that's going around that basically says the kids have to stay in the house that you were in when you were married or together, and that's not real?
Oh, gosh.
That's not
I've
a thing?
never heard that. That can crop up as an argument, like, oh, they stay with me, I've got the house the kids have been in. Or it might crop up as there's no reason they can't spend time with me because after all, they know the house. But the kids are more than a residence, aren't they? If it was that easy, I think hardly anyone would separate with children because they aren't prepared to leave the children behind. So,
and whoever's listening to this, they've probably already gone past that first initial breakup part where someone has gone, I can't stand
another day.
My ex, I'm going to go stay at my mum's house or whatever.
Yes.
But then as things settle, you're like, okay, we really need to sort something out with the kids. We need to figure out how this is going to work. So who gets to decide who the children live with and what time they get to spend with the other parent? Who gets to make that decision?
In a perfect world, both parents would make a decision in the best interests of the children according to their. So it's the parents often.
So the parents get to make that decision?
Yeah, yes, no one.
So it's not written anywhere. We've just established there's no rules. No rules.
There are no rules. Think about this. You've been parenting those kids born, and that sort of give and take in a relationship, even if you're not getting on very well, it's a business bringing up children. Who's going to pick you're orchestrating them. The difference after separation is just that there's a lot of hurt feelings and perhaps positioning of themselves to, I don't know, have more time with the kids, or someone may be very hurt that they haven't spent enough time with the kids and start to scramble. All of those emotions come in. What was a kind of a business of catering to the children, their wishes are paramount, taking them where they need to go, doing the things they need to, suddenly that gets muddied by people's feelings. And then you might find yourself in a situation where it's really hard to reach agreement.
So in an amicable relationship breakup, maybe one person was always doing the school pickups and drop-offs and they were always doing the organising, looking after the kids pretty much. So in an amicable one, they'd probably just continue the way it was going in the marriage. It's just now you're separated and making some time for the kids to see the other parent so that they continue their relationship, etc., if that's what works well for them.
That sounds perfect.
In an amicable. And I would, and Mum, wouldn't you say there are actually people out there who've done this? They've never gone to court.
Sure.
They've never written a parenting plan.
For sure.
And they've just gone on their ways and done their things that they need to do.
Absolutely. That's good. Lawyers don't see everybody with family law matters. So we only see some of them for matters. So, yeah, I think people work it out. So a good test kind of to think about where the children should be with the person is what you do the day after the separation or 2 days after. Who is the obvious person to drop them off, pick them up, put them into bed? That little arrangement where everyone's, frankly, Laura, it's before they get legal advice usually. Arrangement is usually the true best interest of the child arrangement, as long as someone isn't being trampled over in their feelings.
So let's talk about that then, the manipulative.
Yeah.
So they've gone to get legal advice and they've found out, oh, I need to work this into my favour. And if you haven't listened to the hidden connection between parenting and property, go and listen to that, because sometimes people find out, manipulative, controlling people find out, like they're not interested in having the kids. Maybe they don't care about the kids, but they are caring about the kids if it means it's going to somehow continue to control you.
Yes.
Or you're somehow going to get more money out of it, or there's all these things.
And bonus points if it can do both. If it can hurt you and bother you and save them child support and get them more inland, and seen a lot of, that's where you end up in court.
So how do people with the manipulative and controlling figure out who ends up with the kids? What are the best strategies to move forwards for someone who's separated and they're just in this limbo?
Yep. Chances are a person who's been manipulative and controlling towards you has probably also demonstrated those behaviours to the children. Ask yourself what it was about the relationship that you couldn't tolerate anymore, and consider whether the kids are in the same position, whether they are at breaking point, whether they've seen enough. They still love that parent, of course, and what is a way that you can minimise the harm of the kids with that. Be ready for those sort of people on the other side to push all of the boundaries.
I really want people who have a manipulative and controlling type to really think hard and long before they come up with an agreement, because sometimes manipulative and controlling divorces end up with an agreement pretty quick, or a parenting plan or consent orders shoved in their faces. And I think if you've got a manipulative controlling ex, you're probably still being manipulated and controlled. And one of the ways I've seen it through our members is they feel guilt for their ex.
Oh, yes.
They feel guilty.
Yes.
And they think that, oh, it would be horrible for my ex not to see my children, and I would feel so bad for my ex. Whilst their ex has done all these horrible things to the children and to them, they still have this empathy, this empathy that comes from being controlled.
Yes. Is it empathy though, or is it just putting yourself last? It's that burn top theory, the theory that if you're cooking dinner and you burn a top, usually the person who cooks the dinner, the mum probably, has the burnt chop. Although in my family, everyone got one burnt chop.
I love the burnt chops, Mum. That's how I cook because I learned that from you. But yes, so I see what you're saying. So putting yourself last, but the problem is, I think, because people are still in a coercively controlling relationship, they are manipulated and controlled into making agreements to the children. And I've seen it so many times with our members and listeners where they've agreed early on, and then eventually once they've come out the other side, they've had space and distance from a controlling person, they realize, wait a minute, this has all been manipulated. And why did I make that decision back then?
Yes.
And don't kick yourself for it. But I think if we can grab and catch any people in that moment in time before they're fully out of it, to let you know that you don't have to come up with an agreement straight away, do you, Mum?
You don't have to have anything in writing. It's breathtaking how fast some people find themselves in mediation before they've really properly absorbed the reality of the situation. But when you step back from the situation, and if you take the children away from the situation, gradually you can see more clearly what was going on. But yeah, it is that kind of guilt thing. But you don't have to have anything in writing. No one can make you sign anything.
Get some counselling and get some understanding about the situation you're in, and thinking about what is the best interest of the kids. And if you can't trust yourself to make that decision, talk to a psychologist, tell them what you're going through, explain the situation, get them to help guide you on deciding, is this a good idea for the kids? And maybe psychologists can't tell you, but they can help you ask the right questions, because we do see it a lot where these people, sadly, and I hope if you're listening today, you haven't done this yet, but you've got, that coerced and manipulated into agreeing out of guilt or out of worry for your ex because but they'll be so lonely, or whatever the reason is. But you've got to try and focus on the best interest of the kid. It's fair enough. If you've been manipulated in the marriage, you're going to be manipulated after the marriage.
Yes.
So don't kick yourself and think, I didn't even see it. It just comes out in a new way.
Does.
The best thing to do, I think, Mum, you're saying with manipulative controlling, is give yourself some breathing space before you agree to anything.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And there's no rush to put in writing. And really, once you understand your own situation, then look at that, like you said, look at that in terms of the child's situation. And be very wary. It's hard enough for kids with separation, right? I don't think anyone leaves a marriage where there's children unless they absolutely got to the end of their rope and they had to leave. So that should give you some guidance in looking at the children and what were they learning in that situation. Were they learning that that's what marriage is, or that's what a relationship is? I think you said it when they say in a plane, the oxygen mask will fall. Put yours on before you put it on the children. That's what you need to do. Make sure you're thinking straight. There's been a lot of gaslighting. So write things down, write pros and cons, and write down the things that have made you leave so that you don't start even questioning whether or not, because all of that feeds into your parenting.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Then let's go to avoidant. Mm-hmm. And these are the type of people that talk to us and say, oh, my ex has just disappeared, like completely doesn't care, doesn't respond to any of my questions about the schooling choice, or they've just gone off into the ether and they've gone off, they've disappeared. Or they come now and then, they drop in for 5 minutes, or they pick up the kids. They say they're going to do it every second weekend, but they don't. So how do they figure out what to do with the kids with an avoidant ex who just,
Yes, again, you're going to put the children in centre. And even though it can be as annoying as anything to have someone not turning up, and it can disrupt it for the children, but you've still got to look to the best interests of the children. So a lot of people accommodate as really bend over backwards so that there is at least some contact between the children and the other parent, so the children don't start wondering what's wrong with them, that their other parent doesn't want to see them. The other thing, though, as time goes by, the children will gradually become aware. Then you can maybe put in place an arrangement that you will only have the children ready or deliver them to such and such if you've been given notice of a few days' notice. Try not to ever set up an arrangement where you have to go to Macca's every second weekend at a certain time on a certain day in that weekend. and your ex doesn't turn up.
So try and set up an arrangement if you've got an avoidant where the kids will be unaware whether they show up or not.
Yes.
You don't want to drag your kids to Macca's and sit there for 5 hours waiting for your ex. You want to have an option where, yes, you can come collect the kids, but we're going to be chilling at home. And if you don't turn up, it's not going to affect our day-to-day. The problem is, I think, for people who have this avoidant ex, and we hear this a lot, it's frustrating because, one, the parent who's got the kids, they want to have some stability for the kids. They want to just get on with life. They're like, okay, you've left, fine, but can you not come and interrupt my normal routine for the rest of my life? So I understand why people get frustrated. But so basically, Mum, if the avoidant is just left, so the parent that's got the kids, is it up to them to just do the parenting? They can make the decisions. Yep. They just don't need to involve the other parent? Yes,
and that's what the law says these days, that one parent, in the absence of a court order, each of you can do all of the things for the children. Third parties like psychologists, doctors, operations, they won't always require the other parent's signature. The Family Law Act says they don't require the consent, but of course, as we've talked about, the psychologist boards and so forth, they may require them to do.
You just have to just keep on keeping on, send them and create arrangements where it's not going to inconvenience the kiddies, basically.
Well, and also to make you rejected, because we have this, come on, you're off Mummy now, and then Mummy doesn't show up, and let down for them. So it's better to keep it like, I do like the orders that say, unless you give me 3 days notice of what weekend you're coming or writing to them, I may not be there when you come to pick up the kids. So you don't have to sit at home waiting for the whole day.
That's what I wanted to ask, because this is the other thing that happens with these avoidants. They all of a sudden go, oh, I'm coming tomorrow to pick up the kids, make them ready for me. Now, because there's no court orders for these people, I know that some feel like they have to do what they're being told by their ex at that time because the kids also are their kids. What do you say to that?
I say to them is you need to determine if it's better for the kids to see their father, especially if they haven't seen him for a while.
Or mother.
Whoever, Is it better for them to see that other parent, or is it more beneficial for you to keep your routine and what your plans were for tomorrow continuing? So the kids might be going to something at BMX or something like that. You don't have to pull the pin on the activities and who hasn't give the 3 days notice or whatever, okay?
So you could set up some good boundaries, and we've got a really good episode on boundary setting, and you could say, okay, sure, you're going to just turn up at the drop of a hat or whenever you feel like it, but I'm going to set up some boundaries, and a good one is to be like, hey, 3 days in advance before or
if you
whatever.
Want to be sure, if you want to be available, you give me 3 days notice. Otherwise, we'll make other plans, because the kids sitting at home can feel just as let down as they can if you've taken them out to meet their
Or
parent.
if they're missing out on BMX, like you said, or whatever. And so with avoidant, just remembering everyone, if you don't have court orders, you don't have to do what your ex says. Just try and do what's in the best interest of the children. All right, so high conflict, how do they figure out what happens with the kids?
That is really tricky. And I have had a case years and years ago where they couldn't agree on a school. And so the children were going to one school 1 week and another school the next week. So if you've got high conflict, if you don't have any orders, nothing's written down, then you can do what you need to do for the children. But expect interference, so to speak, from the other person. They may initiate dental appointments or eye tests or things. And if they want to do that and they want to pay for it, that might be good. That might suit you. But sometimes exes, they're not co-parenting, they're counter-parenting. So you get your kids the vaccination. They tell the kids they're poisoned now because of the needles. You put kids in to see an orthodontist. They tell the kids how painful it's going to be and that there's no reason for them to be going. And that really messes with the kids.
So in those early stages with the high conflict, sometimes having a parenting plan can stop some of the drama because it's going to be about what time, where, with who, and that constant fighting over, no, I want them this weekend because I've got Aunt Sally's thingy thing. So if you can create some sort of plan with your ex, even though they're high conflict, even if it's their plan, as long as it's good for the kids, then at least you've got something to stick to so they can't constantly fight with it. And we're going to talk about in a minute when should you get parenting orders as opposed to relying on a parenting plan. But so amicable, avoidant, manipulative, and high conflict can all go to mediation as well.
Yeah.
You don't need to see a court. You can just sort it out amongst yourselves. If you want to come to an agreement and you can't, you can try mediation. All of those types can try mediation. And then, of course, if you want, you can take it that next step further. If you still can't sort it out, you can get court orders or a consent order once you agree. So let's talk about when you stick to a parenting plan or when you need to go to orders. So, Mum, what are the benefits of a parenting plan?
The parenting plan helps everyone be clear they stand to what.
And that stops the fights.
Hopefully, it stops the fight.
Yeah.
Or it's like the ultimate determinator if you can't manage to agree. The one thing about that is it's unenforceable. You can't go to court to that order. It isn't the final answer either. It can, if you've got a parenting plan and someone wants to file in court for a children's orders, the parenting plan doesn't stop them going to court to get orders.
And I think we should really put that in bold because we've heard some people who've been stuck in these horrible situations, particularly the manipulative and controlling or family violence situations where they've agreed to a parenting plan in the early stages, maybe in a mediation or something, because they didn't know how bad it was or whatever the reason. They're seeing it with their eyes through the kids. This isn't working. This parenting plan doesn't work. And then they, for some reason, think they have to keep doing it. And Mum, what do you say to those people who feel like that the parenting plan has to keep going even if it's not working?
Well, it is just a plan, okay? And you are not bound by it. Okay? And if someone goes to court to clarify or get new orders, the court will have a look at it. They'll have a look at your parenting plan and you can explain why it doesn't suit. But yes, parenting plans are often entered into in those very early stages. And like we said, all of that coercive control and guilt and confusion and grief all gets mixed in there. So sometimes the parenting aren't the best for you.
I think we should mention there, because you said the parenting plans do get looked at if you end up in court.
Yeah.
So if you are in those early stages, it is that big catch. Like you said, Mum, start as you mean to go on. Yep. Or the flip side of that is, why did you agree to the kids doing 50-50 or 80-20? If you think it's such a bad idea, if you've already agreed to it in a parenting plan, they're the kind of questions that are going to get asked.
That's right. And also the difference between supervised time and unsupervised time. When a court's looking at whether a parent can move on to unsupervised time, when they look back in the history and that person was having unsupervised time for the first, and your answer is usually, that was before I had legal advice.
Or before I had counselling and realised how bad the situation was.
And, you know, with a parenting plan, you don't even really need a witness. So these are things that can be put on the table in front of someone who's very upset and sign this. And that's the reason that they're not binding.
Okay, so parenting plans are good because they're flexible. They're not enforceable.
No.
So then we've got formal court orders, which are definitely not flexible. Oh, they can be if you need them to be, if you've got it in there. But they're forever.
They're enforceable and right up until the kids are 18.
Okay, so let's look at the different personality types. So we've got amicable.
Yep.
Should amicable be getting formal court orders or should they just be working on a parenting plan?
I always think that consent orders, which yourself in the court, are useful for locking in arrangements while you are still amicable, because it only takes a little thing, a new partner, a new baby, a diagnosis, a loss of a parent, and somebody thinking. So I'd like to lock that in early as an agreement. And the court won't make that order unless they think it is in the best interests of the children. And you have to have someone witness your signature on it.
So sometimes it's good because it means if anything goes awry later, then at least you've got those in place. Okay. What about manipulative and controlling? Is it better to have a parenting plan or should they be trying to get formal agreement, consent orders in the court?
Look, I think that the cost of going to the court and get consent orders or orders about the children is always higher if you've got a manipulative and controlling person. However, I think it's worth it because you've got a manipulative and controlling act. And if you don't put an end to it at some stage, you will have that kind of pushback and coercive control right up until the children are out of age. And it's usually, I think, the manipulative parent who starts working on the kids when they turn 12. Oh, you're old enough to make your own mind up, or just tell daddy that let's not go there. I'll take you to, I don't know, under whatever. Don't go. And so that there's a lot of pressure then put on the kids. I've seen kids totally relieved when they find out. You say to them, but it's not your choice, but these orders we've made and mummy and daddy agree on them. And they're so relieved.
All right. So sometimes, yes, it's a good thing, but I think you need to think about it in regards of a protection for you and your children against a manipulative and controlling person. If you can get them to agree in mediation, awesome. If you have to go to court, sometimes it's what you have to do.
Yes, and a manipulative and controlling person, which seems to align with the narcissistic type personality, they're never going to see their flaws or any fault in them. And so it's very easy to spot in the witness box and very easy to spot by the family report writers. If you've got an ex who's a home devil and an angel, then you may convince the family report writer that she's all sweetness and light and you're the fiend from hell. But in my experience, family report writers are able to identify those types of personalities.
And can I point out here, I know people think, oh, I don't want to go to court because it'll be stressful, there'll be heaps of drama, it'll cost lots of money, and I get all of that. But with these types of people, what I've seen is some people, they just deal with the drama, then everything settles down again. They deal with the drama, everything settles down again. They do this for 5-6 years anyway. Yeah. And then they have to go to court when the kids are a bit older because it all falls apart because there's some big argument. So they end up in court anyway.
Yes.
So sometimes I think for these type of people, if you always have to have a big drama about everything, maybe going to mediation, trying to get an agreement, or if not, getting the judge to come up with an agreement in the early part, the sooner, instead of waiting 4 or 5 years later and then going through it again.
I agree. And also too, it may sound weird, but if you've got kids who are like, I don't know, 5 years, you can order a consent order. You can make an agreement to be turned into an order that is suitable for those children up until they're 18, right? Because the court says every family just gets one hearing unless there's been a radical change in circumstances. And there's only been a few times where the has agreed that the kids getting older was a reason to reopen children's matters, because the court generally has the view, and it's backed by science and research, that the litigation itself is very harmful for children, and putting them through it more than once, even though you think you're not involving them, even though you think they like the family report writer, no, this is stressful for them. It impairs each of your parents, I think, actually, as you go through court. And so there's a lot to be said for sitting down and working it through, and so that you can definitively say to your family, for instance, oh, yes, I've got the kids for Christmas that year we can go to Fiji.
Once and done and once. And then that way the kids aren't being put through it every Christmas. Who are you going to, like the argument and the uncertainty. Okay, so let's get on to avoidant. Should avoidant people, and this is one of we wanted to do a whole episode on this, but we can't, but should avoidant exes who just disappear, or they're not doing anything, they're really not interested, they show up for a bit, then they disappear again. Should they be locking in parenting orders, or should they be sticking to a parenting plan? You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce, or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your question. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today. Okay, so let's get on to avoidant. Should avoidant people, and this is one of we wanted to do a whole episode on this, but we can't, but should avoidant exes who just disappear, or they're not doing anything, they're really not interested, they show up for a bit, then they disappear again. Should they be locking in parenting orders, or should they be sticking to a parenting plan? What do you think about that?
Probably not going to be able to make them stick to it. The only one sticking to it will be you, which creates a bit of a rod and back. if you think that they might agree to this, then you could have children spend time with you, or live with you, and see the other parent from time to time as agreed between the parties. Leave it like that. It's open to interpretation, but it locks in where the kids live so that you don't have that worry in your mind.
Because we do see these avoidants disappear, come back 2 years later with a new partner, and the new partner's like, where are your kids? Oh, my ex won't let me see my kids.
Oh.
And then you better take them to court, or you better I want to see your kids. And so this new partner can be the driving force for litigation and drama with the kids. So, Mum, you're thinking sometimes it's a good idea to lock that order in that says the kids live with who they're with, and then they see the other parent at all times, agree between the parties, which you point out basically means you both have to agree.
Yes.
And if you don't agree, then it doesn't happen.
And for the court, if you had a contested hearing and the court, you asked the judge to make that order, and been to a couple where that was the order sought by us, looked at by us, the judge has to be pretty sure that you, the one who's wanting to be able to call the shots, are going to be guided by the best interests of the children and not big malice or anything else. But it's interesting.
All right. So high conflict, Mum. Parenting plan to start with, and then they should jump into orders? Or what are your thoughts on high conflict with parenting orders?
Look, a parenting plan's fine if it works, okay? A high conflict person might to find the pinch points, the little areas where the parenting plan's not clear and they can annoy you and argue with you. No, that's not what they say. So sometimes it's a good idea to practice with the parenting plan.
That's good.
So in the course, we talk about 12 agreements, right? Because people, if you get ChatGPT, for instance, to draft up something, it's not going to think about the pupil-free days and what if the pupil-free day follows, or there's a lot to think of. And if you've got two people of goodwill towards each other, succinct and brief orders, dot points would be enough for them to operate effectively and look after the children. If you've got high conflict, you're going to be spending, I suspect, the parenting plan stage plugging up holes that you didn't know were there. And then by the time then you can go into your consent orders knowing that the parenting plan found all the weaknesses, so to speak.
That's such a good point because, yes, we've got an episode called The 12 Agreements. I think we've also got in the course we do about the what ifs. So it's just important, and that is good. It's a good idea to look for those holes. Doesn't matter what type of ex you've got. Look at the holes and go, okay, every time this crops up, there's a big argument because I don't know, the second Sunday doesn't match with this one, or Easter falls on the moon pattern, not the date
or
pattern.
If I look at it this way, they're going to spend every birthday with that. I always advocate to print out, sorry about being such old-fashioned, but print out some calendars that have the school terms marked your state. Print out maybe even a full year's worth, right? So you can mark in the holidays, mark in the other things, and see how your would work. And I used to do it. I would take them still. And you use a pen and cross out the days for you and mark the others for them and just see how it looks and where's the grey area.
Okay. What do you do if your ex doesn't stick to the parenting plan?
As long as it's not depriving you of time with your child, if they're not coming to get the child, then really there's not much you can do. Even if you had a court order, the court can't enforce that or won't. They're not going to make a parent go and collect their child and spend time with them, because how could that possibly be in the best interest of the children? So if your ex doesn't follow the parenting plan.
What if it's the other way around? What if the ex takes the kids and bails when they're meant to be dropping them off?
Then you would be getting across and probably bringing an urgent application if the children are needed back urgently, best interests, or you would go straight into your pre-action procedures, invite mediation. But I would think in that case where they've withheld the children contrary to a parenting plan and you are worried about the kids' welfare, then you might want to bring an urgent application, be started by emailing the registrar with the documents and getting the court to ratify. And all you would need to do is attach the parenting plan, say how long you've been following it, and say what's happened.
Okay. But get legal advice. And there are lots of free legal services that will support you doing that as well. Some people are really wanting to get orders as soon as possible.
Yes, there's, isn't it? I'll just get that done. It's done.
They just want to get it over with. They want to get the divorce paperwork. They want to get the parenting agreement and the property done, and then they want to walk off. And look, totally understand that, especially if you're the one who's left your ex. But, Mum, is it always a good idea to get orders straight away?
Not always. You do need to make sure that what you're agreeing to, you can live with. You're not being, like we were saying, not being somehow propelled by fear or guilt or concern or whatever it is, control.
So recently we've had some people who you've spoken to and we've had in the group, and we realised they were pushing for orders when they were already in an environment and everything was happening with the kids exactly how they wanted it to happen. But they were the ones that were trying to go to court. So can you explain that dynamic so people understand, so that anyone who's doing this mistake right now doesn't make this mistake?
Yes. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 people I've spoken to over the last few months. I know that people want to settle things. They want consistency for the children. However, if the other person isn't going to play ball and isn't going to come and collect the children, then there's really not much you can do. So if you go to court, it's 2 sides of a coin. You also have to make the children available at that time, every single, whatever it is, week or fortnight, even though the other person almost never shows up. So it's quite a big obligation on you.
But there was also, Mum, the other situation that we dealt with where the kids were with the parent full-time.
Yes.
And the ex was like, I want to see the kids. And they were like, it's not safe for you to see the kids. I'm going to keep the children with me. But then that person who had the kids was thinking they had to file in court.
Yes.
Can you talk about that situation?
Okay. So one of the things your lawyer will do for you, if you have one, they will know all the things that they could do, but they should also advise you on the things that you should do. And sometimes people think they have to go and get orders in the court, but when in reality, no orders is the perfect answer. If you've got the kids as often as you want them, and there's no debate about that. In fact, if you're only worried because they don't go to the other person often enough, really, you've got everything you want. And the way that the Family Law Act was amended means that you alone can take them to whatever medical appointments they need. There's no requirement for consultation anymore. You just do the things for the child.
And if your ex has an issue with how it's happening, let them take you to court.
Yep.
Don't you go to all the effort of filing all the documents and spending all the money. Let them do that. And sometimes those really loud, angry exes who want what they want and they want it now, let them, if it's safe, let them file in court. Don't stress yourself about doing that part. And they might not ever do it. And I see some people where they think, I'm going to do it before my ex does it. But in reality, if you just sit back and wait, maybe they won't do it at all. And it's all just bark and no bite.
And there's no real magic in being the applicant or the respondent, the person who files or who doesn't. Yes, so if you've got everything, if it's working quite well, then don't be pressured into court, okay? They may take you to mediation. You should do that so that if it ever ends up in court, you look like you've tried to resolve it or you have trouble. It's the children's version of sitting pretty with property. Talk about, don't we, Laura, how if someone's in a house and they've got rental or you'll pay up the mortgage and they're not in a hurry to change that, they're sitting pretty. Well, in your case, you're comfortable, the kids are being cared for. If they're not comfortable, the other person, if they're serious, then they may take you to court. And of course, you'd raise with the court their inconsistency.
Yeah. So just a summary of this before we go on to the DV part. Parenting plans are great when trust still exists, when you can work to some extent with your ex. Flexibility is great until it stops working. Then you need to move forwards. Court orders protect you from when there's risk of manipulation or repeated conflict. So sometimes that can be good, but if you have it too soon, you might be locked into risk and manipulation forever. So you've got to make sure you wait and see where the holes are going to be, or be educated as much as you can on it. And you can update parenting plans whenever you want. You don't have to keep following it if it's not in the best interest of the children. But orders really either need both of you to agree to change it or some very big deal for a court to consider changing orders. So that's why you really got to think hard about which step you want to take. So, Mum, let's talk about family violence. And again, trigger warning, you can call 13, 11, 14 if you feel triggered. And we've talked a little bit about it already. Yeah. So when it comes to figuring out what to do there, if you've got a domestic violence order against your ex, how do you navigate time with your kids, with them?
In the Section 60B of the Family Law Act here, the objects of the part, A, to ensure the best interests of the children are met, including by ensuring their safety, okay? And they talk about the rights of the child, Convention 89. So your focus needs to be safety for the kids. If it wasn't safe for you, is it safe for the kids? Or do they need to be seeing the person in a supervised environment? Contact centre.
Okay, so there's this option for people to see their kids in a safer way if there is violence or some issues. So what is a supervised contact option?
So it's actually in degrees. So if a person is not really safe, it's not really safe for the child to spend a person with no one else around, then there's a couple of things you could do. One is you could perhaps try to reach agreement that they only spend time with the child or children at a certain person's place or in the company of a certain other person. It might be that's not an option. Then you might have, there are what they call contact centres in Australia. And these are places that are really like big play kindies or schools where the people who work there will monitor your ex and the child or children to make sure that all of the interactions are positive, that they don't say anything wrong to the children, that the needs are met, if they need a nappy changing or whatever like that. So that's a contact centre.
So you could say if you felt it was safe for your child to see your ex or their parent in a supervised way, you could look at the degrees, whether it's whenever their mother is around as well, or whenever, I don't know, auntie or uncle is with them, or if it's at a contact centre. Yeah. So there are options that people could do. So what if you think they're just not safe?
Yes.
And supervised time is a bad idea and contact centre is a bad idea, and you couldn't trust anybody to be the person who jumped in between the kid and
trouble
the parent.
Yeah. Sometimes, or particularly people from family violence situations, they worry the children, and the fact that in a blink of an eye, things change. And in that case, I've seen some very brave souls who put themselves forward as supervisors. I will watch. I'll be within eyeshot. I'll be able to see, but hear. And they might try to put themselves up as that person. It's hardly ever a good idea.
We haven't mentioned Zoom calls.
I'm just about to do that.
FaceTime, phone calls, which all can be supervised as well.
And inside, so though, in a hierarchy, right, of time, in a perfect world with everything working well, there should be unsupervised time with both parents, right? If there's risk, then there should be supervised time either by a family member in a contact centre, or you might think about whether you do the supervision. And then lower down on that scale then are the Zoom call and whatever other electronic communication. So there's a little bit of if you're in a family violence situation, a Zoom call might seem like a good idea, but make sure if it's on a mobile device, for instance, that your child's not around the house or showing daddy or mummy what cooked for dinner, dad, those sort of things. You don't want that intrusion in your space if you have been the victim of family violence.
Is there ever no time at all?
Yes, the court does from time to time order, and you can either, if you ask the court, they will either make an order for some time or for no time. But sometimes there's people who just never turn up, so they're actually having no time. So if the court orders no time, okay, then they may say that a person can send cards, but only at Christmas Eve, birthday. Some of them may let the person with whom the child's living give them the right to have a look and vet the contents before they pass it on. And if they're that bad and they can send cards and letters, that leaves it completely in the hands of the person with whom the child lives to just put them in the bin.
Okay, let's hope that doesn't come to any situation for anyone. But I'm just wondering, and we've seen this before, we were talking before about if you're in a manipulative, controlling relationship, you may fall for agreeing to something that you later think is a bad idea. And we've talked about how the court goes, well, if that person was so dangerous, why did you let them be around that person in the first place? We see people manipulated into letting their kids go unsupervised to a parent, but also where they've been convinced, okay, supervised time will do that. They haven't got court orders. They've just agreed to supervised time. And then the parent realizes it's not working. Are they allowed to pull the pin on it?
Yeah. So these are decisions. If you've reached a decision to go to a contact centre, both parties have agreed for that, then the minute...
And it's not court ordered.
The minute you stop agreeing, then it stops becoming something that's agreed. Although, of course, like I said, if it ends up in court, the court looks back over and going on and wants an explanation. Hopefully, that question of why did you allow unsupervised time when now you want all time to be supervised, I think now the court's more trauma-informed, more aware of the impact of coercive control, and that a lot of the times in the early stages of a breakdown of a relationship, the victim of coercive control often acts against their better judgment because they're easily swayed. They may have had a little bit with pushing, and they just haven't got the strength to resist.
And moving forwards, does supervised time get locked into a court order or it does?
Yes, there's been a few cases, Rosie, where people have said, look, the court said, I don't think this is ideal. Supervised time is too artificial, the kids are, and we need to move on from there. And if supervised time is the only sort of time that can happen, well, then maybe no face-to-face time should happen at all. And they resort then to Zoom calls and things like that. You know, the worry about getting things right for a 3-year-old in trying to crystal ball gaze to get everything from kinder to this year.
I think we could just quickly touch on supervised contact centres before we go. We know that there's been some new changes where they're going to be trying making them
there's
some sort
cowboys
of compliance.
Yep.
What's the warning you've got for anyone who is considering supervised time about choice?
I wouldn't be accepting the recommendation. I think that there are some cowboys out there. I think that's why the courts had to move to be the centres. What they're trying to do is get the contact centre staff properly trauma-informed, that they understand that when someone presents it and behaves properly with the children, that doesn't mean that person is perfect.
Not true. So I think we've discussed a lot, and I hope we haven't scared anyone from this. And we're not saying don't get orders, do get orders. We're saying consider all your options. But I think the main point I want to get across today is these decisions you're making, don't be bullied into making anything or be told you have to do something. And also be aware that whatever you do now and whatever you do agree to now, if you do end up in court, will be looked at. So it's, even though it seems like, oh, we've just broken up, this isn't the important time. In hindsight, if you look at people as they go through our courses, what they did at the early stages really matters. And that threat of we're going to take you to court if you don't agree to X, Y, Z, a lot of the time when we've heard that threat and the members have told us, oh, this has happened and they're threatened to take me to court, and mum always goes, oh, good, the court will see what they've done. And so sometimes if you're self-represented or if you're being bamboozled by the other side, they try and scare you into agreeing to things. So go and get some legal advice, educate yourself and go, wait a minute. You may find out that you're being tricked. So just be aware that happens in the early stages, particularly if there's been violence, that sometimes lawyers are trying to hustle as fast as they can to get an agreement so that you might not end up in court, so you avoid that, but getting what's properly best for the kids. All right. I hope we've walked you guys through something that may help. I felt like we need to do a bit of an overview. I really want to get into the medical side of things because there's been some horrible medical things I've been hearing about. So stay tuned. We'll get into that soon. But thank you again, Mum, and good luck to anyone who's trying to navigate this. We know how absolutely horribly stressful it is. And good on you for listening and learning and finding out what's the best for your kiddos, because when it comes down to it, that's what matters. Thanks, Mum. Bye. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you.
Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.